Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Father-Son Packers podcast, your source for Packers news, notes, and analysis, and maybe a little ranting and raving today on this this postgame. But anyway,
I guess that goes under analysis.
I guess. But anyway, my name is Tommy. I'm one of your hosts, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, my dad, Matt. Dad, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. You know, we made it through the holidays. Had a very nice Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
The games. Well, what games?
Yeah,
we opened presents. We ate sweets. We cooked meals.
And Men in Black neuralized the game from our brains. No, but yeah, we are here today.
I'm just resetting that neuralizer to Monday the 23rd.
I'm trying to jump back in time and let us replay that game. But anyway, we are here today. We've already teased it a little bit. Schedule got a little thrown off by the holidays with the new year, so we're doing this a day later than we normally would, so apologies for that. But we are here today to break down the Packers' 27-25 loss to the Minnesota Vikings in Week 17, talk about, what we think it means for Green Bay, talk about what Green Bay did well, that'll be short, and then talk about what Green Bay maybe didn't do so well, maybe needs to work on if they're going to go on a playoff run. But we're going to talk all about that, Packers falling to 11-5, dropping down to the 7th seed, talk about that as well. Before we get to any of that, though, just wanted to pitch a couple of things. We are now on Blue Sky at FatherSonPacker. So it's the same as the Twitter, at FatherSonPacker on Twitter, at FatherSonPacker on Blue Sky if you want to go check us out there. So check that out. We tweet or, post out whenever we have new episodes out, any other, Packers roster moves, injury reports, which we'll be getting into in a second, content from other Packers content creators, et cetera, one-stop shopping for everything Titletown. So once again, that's at FatherSonPacker. And then if you like what you hear today, please subscribe, whether that's, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, leave a comment, leave a review, tell a friend, et cetera. We would really appreciate it. But Dad, should we get into the news portion of this? We have bad news to touch on, unfortunately, that we got today. We're recording this the evening of Wednesday, January 1st, so Happy New Year to everyone. We're in 2025 now, which is exciting.
Ooh, yeah. But, I almost jumped ahead to 2026 when I was trying to tell Mom what year it was going to be.
Well, hopefully that's not you subliminally knowing something about this coming 2025. But let's start with some news, and let's start with just some injury updates from that game. Zane Anderson got a concussion during that game against the Vikings. He's, in the concussion protocol. Same with Devontae Wyatt. But the big news that we got on today was that Jair Alexander will unfortunately not be returning this season per Matt LaFleur, or most likely not returning. He is going to get knee surgery, or already had knee surgery as of this one. Yeah. And likely will not be back before Super Bowl weekend, I think was the official report. But even that
Fingers
is
crossed.
Probably a little bit dicey, even if we make it that far. But Dad, obviously stinks. We kind of, talked about this maybe being the writing on the wall with the fact that they never put him on IR, but it had been 6 weeks and had been going backwards in terms of his practice participation. But still, obviously stinks. I believe it was Zach Cruz had a tweet out there as well. Obviously, first and foremost, hope Jair's okay. Hope the surgery went well. Hope he's back strong next year. But also very impactful to the Packers defense because Zach Cruz tweeted out, I believe it's like they allow a passer rating of which passer rating is not perfect, but like a passer rating of 77 with him on the field and 93 with him off the field, and a completion percentage 10% points higher when he's not on the field. He's a big part of this Packers defense. They've been missing him for the past 6 weeks, and they're going to be missing him going forward too.
We just need to go straight nuclear on offense.
Yeah, pretty much.
30 points a game is, that's not the bar anymore.
Yeah.
5 straight of 30. We need to raise that up another 10.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely feels like it, especially with, we'll talk about, the defensive performance in this Vikings game and, how that went, which we'll talk about in a second. But yeah, really stinks. It's going to be a lot of extra weight on Carrington Valentine's shoulders, who's done very well in, his mop-up duty, but he's going to have even more of a job to be guarding a lot of, top-level receivers and having to do that a lot more. And then also on Stokes coming in and, spelling Valentine, they're still doing a bit of a rotation there. And, he's probably going to have to be the other starting outside corner if, Williams keeps missing time with Bullard moving back to safety and then Keyshawn moving to the slot. I mean, it is just, I believe Matt LaFleur even used this term, it is musical chairs back there. They are rotating everyone around. It's not going great. Hopefully with a full week of practice in these spots, it can be a little bit better. But yeah, it's been tough for the Green Bay secondary, and it looks like it's going to be tough going forward too.
I mean, we've been moving around players in the middle of games on multiple occasions. Now it's time to move Bullard into the slot and Keyshawn. Oh, I don't know. Now we got to go Bullard to the safety.
Yep,
and Keyshawn
Zane Anderson's out now to put Bullard back deep. And
who would have thought that losing Zane Anderson
would
throw such a wrench
detrimental
into our defense. It's like, this is the man who I must, Zane Anderson, I am sorry. We, impugned your name last year, wondering if you were a real person or not.
A lot of
and
people
now
did,
it turns out you're one of the most important players on the defense.
Yeah. Yeah, him and Evan Williams. I think it was noticeable when they had to put Bullard back at deep safety that he just wasn't, whether it was about, I want to say, first game back for him after that ankle injury. So there's that. He repped in practice all week in the nickel in the slot, and then having to move back to safety, just with no practice there. First game back, probably not easy for him, but he didn't have a great day there. But that was tough. But Dad, we're already kind of talking about this game, so let's move on to, since we've talked about Jair a little bit. Anything else you wanted to add there? Because, it's just going to be tough against, you look at the top of the NFC, the Eagles, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. The Vikings, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. You look at the Rams, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua. You look at Tampa, Mike Evans. You look at the Commanders, Terry McLaurin. You look at the Lions. Jameson Williams is going off right now. They still have Amon-Ra St. Brown as well. A lot of top-level weapons on these teams, and not having your top corner against those teams is going to be really rough.
Yeah, and I think, in hindsight, it just it took longer than they were either hoping or expecting. Either it wasn't responding properly or they misjudged it from the start. It would have been, they'd only done the surgery right away.
But also, you do have to wonder about having him play against Chicago.
Those 10 snaps where we paid.
We aggravated it almost immediately.
Snaps.
I mean, hindsight is 2020, so hard to say.
Nothing to do about it now.
Yeah,
just got to, as I say, next man up, buckle up. But I would say, looking at how the last 5 weeks or so, Valentine has been doing pretty well.
Yeah, he has. But not against the highest of competitions, to be fair. But he has been doing pretty well. Yeah, he's definitely been
passer. Yeah, his passer rating against is like 65. It's the 21st best in the league.
And 2 picks in a row. Also for Valentine, back-to-back games with a pick. So actually, no,
Stokes
never mind. Sorry, 2 picks in the last 3 games. My bad. Forgot that Saints game. That Saints game got kind of lost in the shuffle there.
Does that not count as a major?
It was a sleepy game? It was a sleepy game. But yeah, and then Stokes has been better than he was at the beginning of the year, I would say. At least there's that. But Dad, let's talk about this Vikings game a little bit more. We'll have plenty to talk about in the coming weeks about looking forward to the playoffs. Let's talk about this game though, because I think for me, a lot of it is going to be viewed through the lens of like how I view this Packers team now. So let's start off with the gut check. Watching this game, immediate reactions to this game, during the game, how were you feeling about this one? What was your emotional, visceral reaction to this one?
It was another slow start with mistakes from the Packers. It dropped their win percentage at kickoff was 56.8%. By the time it was 4 minutes left in the second quarter, their win percentage probability was 26.6%, leaving them scrambling for the whole rest of the game to come back.
Yeah, a very slow start. Again, just like the game against the Lions, just like several of these games against
foot,
just like the same,
fire.
Just like the same game against the Vikings earlier in the year, where you fall down 28-0, and this one you fall down 20-3. It's so tough because I think this one, a lot of people have kind of echoed the same sentiments, but this one was frustrating because this was your last chance to prove that you could beat a top-level team before the playoffs start. This was your chance to prove that you could beat a top-level playoff team on the road. This was your chance to win a second division game. You've gotten swept by the Vikings and the Lions now this season, so that's not good. That's terrible. And I think just overall, just really tough to see the Packers with what they have put on the field against these best teams. Now, this was when they were going to change the narrative. When they played the Lions before, they almost had them. When they played the Lions before that, Love was hurt. When they played the Vikings before that, Love was hurt. When they played the Eagles before that, it was the first game of the year on an ice rink. This was the one where you had to go out and at least play well, at least play a good game, but they got absolutely just thoroughly outplayed for 3.5 quarters. And so it kind of leaves me thinking, this is a good team, but with what they've put on the field, it's not a great team. And it's hard to see them winning 3 straight road playoff games against the teams that they're 0-5 against pretty much to make it to the Super Bowl. Maybe I think they could beat any one of those teams in a single one-on-one matchup. but they haven't shown the consistency. And they haven't even actually shown that they could do it any one game. I still think they could win any one game, but when you go 0-5, it's hard to imagine you suddenly ripping off 3 in a row on the road against these teams. So I guess it's just tough because my gut check is, not quite as good of a team as we maybe hoped they could have been. And a good team, maybe win a playoff game, maybe win 2, but it's just such a hard path, and they haven't shown you that they can beat those best teams this year.
Yeah, the thing is, it seems like when they play the best teams, they have these
stupid mistakes. Yeah.
Do they get tight? What is it that about the good teams that they, shoot themselves in the foot on?
They always start slow and make a ton of mistakes. Which
right. So why are those are the good teams?
Those are the symptoms of being tight. Like if you start kind of like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, and also you make a lot of mental errors, which they've done in all of these games, and it's really frustrating, and we'll talk about specifics in a bit, but I don't know what it is. I mean, you could argue they're the youngest team in the league. It's a fair argument. Is it just a product of you don't have veteran voices, veteran leadership, guys who have been in those situations a ton of times, and so they're not as fazed by them? Is it simple as that? Is it coaching? Is it preparedness? They're not getting enough, the film work they're doing during the week is not translating to game day. Is it the players that they have? I think it's a valid question at this point to, they have a lot of B plus players on the roster, not as many A's as some of these other top level teams. They don't have a Justin Jefferson. They don't have an AJ Brown. They don't have they don't have a Penei Sewell on their offensive line. They don't have superstar players at a lot of these positions. Their closest thing to it is probably Josh Jacobs, Jordan Love, and McKinney are probably the 3 guys that are closest to it. And
how many players would you say, that's something that would have been interesting to look at, are in contention for being All-Pro?
Pretty much just McKinney and Jacobs this year, I would say. The only ones that are even in contention.
So you compare that to the other teams. You want to think star level players. How many do you need? How many do teams that are contending have?
Yeah. And I think part of it is we'll talk about this going forward, but we can just quickly mention it now. You're not hitting on your first round picks. You're just not. Lucas Van Ness has not been he was a top 12 pick. Not worth a top 12 pick through 2 years. You're looking at before that you had Devontae Wyatt and Quay Walker. Neither of those guys have lived up to being first-round picks. Eric Stokes has not lived up to being a first-round pick. Jordan Morgan is out for the year, but before that, had not beat out Sean Ryan for a job. That's not good. A testament to Sean Ryan as well, and injury-related as well. But
I would say some of that was he seemed to be on track to take over that job, and then got the injury, set him back, and then they started bringing him in with a rotation.
Sure, but even when he was rotating,
Ryan started playing better, and then he got hurt again.
But even when he was rotating, I would say it's fair to say Ryan was probably outplaying him. And then you keep going back. Savage was probably a bit of a whiff. You don't give him a second contract. Gary, Alexander, and Love are your first rounders that have been worth it. But the other, you're pretty much 3 for 8. Maybe in first round picks over the last 6-7 years.
Yeah.
You got to get some star power on this team with some of these first round picks. It's just, I think that's a big thing. I think that's my takeaway from this game, because you look at the Vikings, Justin Jefferson is going to beat the guy across from him more 9 times out of 10. You look at the Eagles, AJ Brown, Jalen Carter, those guys are going to win their one-on-one matchups. And we're going to talk about this in a second when we talk about Packers beating man coverage and pass rush. The Packers don't have guys who can just go and have a one-on-one and just be better than that guy and win 8 out of 10 times. And that's that's the thing right now.
What the Eagles are getting out of Carter compared to what the Packers are getting out of Lucas Van Ness.
Yeah.
Very close.
4 picks apart.
Yeah.
Practically.
Spots.
Yeah. Picked pretty closely, one after another. And so I think that's maybe part of it. We've kind of been talking about this a little bit. Maybe we should just go into talking about this game, though, and talking about the different sides of the ball and what went right and what went wrong, and maybe what they can fix going forward. Because, we're going to talk about, in the coming weeks, looking forward to the playoffs, because the Packers have clinched a playoff spot, although they are stuck in the 7th seed and would need help from the Commanders.
Let's go Cowboys.
Yeah, right.
We have to root for the Cowboys this week?
Yeah, pretty much the situation, for those of you who don't know, is the Packers would need to beat the Bears, and then the Commanders would need to lose to the Cowboys, and then the Packers would then make it to the 6th seed, and then they would play probably the Rams. The Rams have now clinched it, so they would play the Rams if they got up to the 6th seed. Currently, where they are in the 7th seed, they'd have to go to Philadelphia, which Rams are good, but I would say Philadelphia is clearly a step above them, so that'd be a tougher matchup. So hopefully, go Cowboys next week, and the Packers can hopefully take care of business against the Bears, which we'll be previewing later this week. But Dad, let's talk a little bit more about this game, and let's start with the biggest play of the game, which we always talk about. This is by ESPN win probability. It was a 15.5% swing for the Vikings from an 84.5% to a 99.9%. And that was the final third down conversion of the game to Cam Akers with a little dump off with him falling over. Dad, I had a question about this. Do you feel like the comeback the Packers put together was real, fake, or somewhere in between?
I know what you're asking, and it's hard. There's a tendency to kind of brush it off. It's like, well, they're way behind, and how high was their win probability ever? But it really did come down to one play with 2 minutes left.
Yes.
So from that perspective.
But when we talk about, how the Packers were getting, when we talk about how the Packers were getting completely covered up in man coverage, a lot of what the Vikings were running late was zone. And so the Packers are great against zone. They can beat zone all day long. I think it was through 3.5 quarters, 100% of the 3rd and 4th downs the Packers had converted 100% of the 3rd and 4th downs the Packers had faced, the Vikings were playing man coverage. It ended up being 85% on the day. And the Packers started 4 of 10 on third downs and ended 8 of 14. They went 4 of 4 on their last third downs. Is that just a product of what are the odds you start 4 of 10 and then go 4 of 4? I don't know. I think it is something. I think, to me, it is more something of that we didn't give up, which is good. But I don't think it should be taken as look, we're that close. Like we were clicking there at the end. That's not it to me. I think it has more to do, if you want to say it's a really good sign for the mentality of the team that they're not going to give up even when they're down. They're not quitting on, they still have confidence in this season. I think that's definitely a valid argument, but I don't think it's like they were clicking there. They found something. I don't know. I don't know if I believe that.
Yeah. And you also have this thing okay, we're close, but we can never actually get the stop we need to have the chance against the Eagles.
Yep.
Against Vikings, the Lions.
Mm-hmm. We can never get them off the field. Yeah. Lions with a tie game. You can't get them off the field. The Vikings in this one, get the ball back down 2, maybe drive and kick a field goal to win it. Can't get the ball back. Eagles at the start of the year, can't get the ball back. Was it a big 8-minute drive? Yeah. I mean, just can't get off the field when you absolutely need to. And it's tough. It's tough. But do you want to start with the defense, or do you want to start with the offense?
I just had some more kind of big picture thoughts. So one thing I did want to say about, there are games that I feel like in terms of evaluating what the Packers are this year, I think we can just throw them out. I don't think they're relevant. The first 2 games against Detroit and Minnesota, that is not an accurate representation of what the team is now. So I don't think looking at those accurately reflects how good the team is now, because your starting quarterback wasn't ready to play, really.
Fair.
It's like the Eagles now without Hurts. Completely different team.
I see what you're saying. It is different. You can say that there were extenuating circumstances in those 2.
So I feel like the 3 games you need to pay attention to: the Eagles game, the second Lions game, and the second Vikings game.
And I would say, if you look at just the Eagles and the second Lions game, you could say, hey, they played them close. The first Eagles game, you make a few field goals, you win that game. The second Lions game, I would argue whoever got the ball last was going to win. This is how I felt about that game. But then this Vikings game, I mean, whether it's they just didn't show up or they were just thoroughly outclassed, that game was not that close.
The other thing I would say is, all 3 of I think the relevant games that are really a measure, well, the last 2 are on the road.
Which they're going to have to do in the playoffs, though.
Now they have to do, I know. But if we're trying to evaluate how good the team really is, that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and the other argument, I'm going to sound so wishy-washy in this. is in this past Vikings game, although they did get, thoroughly, I would say, outplayed on the scoreboard. It's this freaking if they did this, if they did that, if they execute on a few more plays, they're in it. If Jaden Reed catches that 4th and 2 and they score a touchdown, it's a close game, but they never do. They never do execute on these important plays. Yeah. And it's so frustrating.
So one thing, after looking at like the probability swing for this game, I wanted to look at so these 5 big matches of the year, the 5 biggest games. What was the win probability at halftime?
Mm-hmm.
Against the Eagles, Green Bay's win probability was 49.6. Yeah. They got up to as high as 57.6 at one point in the second half. First game against Minnesota, Green Bay's win probability at halftime, 16.2%. The best they got in the second half was 18.3. Like, never really close.
Yeah.
Against Detroit, 7.9% at half. The first game. They got up to 9.4% in the second half.
Sweet.
A blip on the radar.
Yeah, we got a little bit.
Detroit, at halftime, Green Bay's 17% at half.
That was disrespectful because we were, down 10? It didn't feel that bad.
We were only down 10, but I guess they were starting with the ball in the second half after we were down 10 at half.
Whatever.
But then we got up as high as 60%, 60.7% in the second half.
Rallied in the second half and made it a game.
And then this game, Green Bay was 20.4% at halftime, and they got up as high as 27.7%.
Starting slow in a lot of these big games.
Starting slow. That's really what I just rambled on for 5 minutes just to say we're starting slow in important games.
Yeah. And is that coaching and game planning? Is that them being tight?
We could talk about it because I think there's evidence from LaFleur's own words.
But I think it's
to
both.
That effect.
I think it's both. I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's like straight up 50-50. They're tight. Like you look at was it the Lions game where Zach Tom just can't block for the first drive, just gets flattened by Zadarius Smith. And then you look at guys just dropping passes to be fair, the first Lions game was an absolute monsoon, so kind of a weird game also, but you look at in this game, they're just a little bit off in all these games. And Josh Jacobs fumbling on the first drive. I mean, come on, we're moving the ball.
Yeah, we're cruising along. First possession, we're moving downfield. Bam.
And you can't be that mad because he's probably the best player on the offense, but come on, man.
It's just one of those things you just feel like, really? Universe, you can do this to me now?
What was it? Aaron Nagler was pointing out that this is a long-standing thing going back all the years under LaFleur, is that in the biggest games, the star players...
Fumble by Jones.
The star players don't play well.
Fumble by a big dog.
Yep. Mercedes Lewis fumble versus the Niners in 2021. Aaron Jones fumble versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2020. Aaron Rodgers throwing that pick, trying to target Lazard. You can argue whether or not it was holding. Still a pick.
That was definitely holding.
Yeah,
he pulled it backwards, and then they called a hold on us later.
Yeah.
I could rant about that for a while.
We could relitigate that for a while, but just the whole offense just being in a malaise in 2019, that NFC Championship game, and Rodgers not being able to move the ball. Just last year, in the game against the Niners. Elton Jenkins got his lunch ate by Javon Hargrave for the entire game. He had the lowest PFF grade of anyone on the line. So your star players just aren't playing like star players when you really need them to. And so that's kind of circling back to the superstar, are there enough A-level players on this team when it comes to the big games to win them? Because, X's and O's versus Jimmy's and Joe's. Jimmy's and Joe's are going to win. But let's talk a little bit more about any more big picture stuff you want to talk about.
I just wanted to go over the actual data behind the slow starts, or at least some of the data behind the slow starts. But let's move on to this.
There's evidence behind the slow starts, but I think we talk about the offense, we talk about the defense. Let's start with the offense, because I think if this team is going to go anywhere, it's going to be on the back of the offense, right? The offense is where you're paying the quarterback. The offense is where you have drafted all these weapons. The offense has been better than the defense, and the idea was the offense would be able to carry them through these games. In this game, though, they just were not good enough. I mean, they scored 3 points at halftime. It was 27-10 in the fourth quarter, I think it was, and then they end up scoring, a late 15 points to make it a little bit more respectable. But I think that there's just a lot to talk about on the offensive side of the ball, and let's start negative. I mean, this has been talked about by a lot of people, and I think it is currently the biggest issue. Packers can't beat man coverage. And this is the same thing that the Lions did to them is what the Vikings did to them. They essentially completely copied that script. They played man coverage. They crowded the box. They dared the Packers to throw, and the Packers could not do it. They don't have an answer for it right now. This is per A to Z Sports since the bye. So this is with a healthy Jordan Love. The Packers are first in EPA per dropback versus zone and 25th in EPA per dropback versus man. First versus 25th? I mean, come on, man. Like, and it's so those numbers are also going into this game, so they don't include this one. I promise you they're not better after this one. But the Vikings completely took advantage of this. They played man coverage on 47% of dropbacks, 85% of third and fourth downs, which we mentioned already. In the first half of this game, Love was just 3 of 7 for 14 yards. And both Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love said after the game, like, yeah, we weren't prepared for that. We did not know that they were going to do that, and we needed to adjust faster. Here's the thing that I think
that just drives me crazy. Your games are on tape. Why would you think that they're just going to ignore it? We even talked about this.
Here's the thing. The Vikings don't run a lot of man coverage, to be fair.
We talked, and that's something we brought up. You brought up,
yeah,
in our pregame.
Is they don't play a lot of man coverage, but the Packers are terrible at it, and the Vikings are actually pretty good at playing man coverage, even though they don't do it much. But then the thing about not being prepared for it, obviously, please prepare for your biggest weaknesses going against like the best coaches in the league. Like, they're gonna probably see if you can do that thing. Number one, be prepared to like have your biggest weaknesses poked at. Number two, how are we not adjusting to man coverage? Andy Herman was going off about this. This is not like, some new defensive scheme that no one has ever. This is man coverage.
No one's ever seen this before.
And I'm not like, this is not an original take by me, but it's just man coverage. You have plays for this. Just call the plays that beat man coverage.
And people talk about this all the time about football now. That almost no corners follow top receivers anymore because it's too easy to scheme up a play to pick them off and be open.
No one plays 100% man coverage anymore, really.
So why are we unprepared?
And people have likened it to like rock, paper, scissors, where like sometimes, they're going to have man, you're going to have a man beater called. They're going to have zone, you're going to have zone beater called. It was the equivalent of like the Vikings throwing.
Do we only have rock?
The Vikings throwing paper 100 times in a row on third down, and we throw rock do we only have every time.
We just go rock.
But no, they just and when they did, have things drawn up with guys getting one-on-one matchups, they just couldn't win. The Packers couldn't get any separation in this game. And I want to, circle back to the Lions game because we talked about it then, where it was like, they played a bunch of man coverage on us. They dared us to throw. We had trouble beating man coverage. And a lot of people are like, well, Romeo Doubs wasn't playing. So, he's one of your better guys, winning in the short and the intermediate zones, like being able to, go up and outmuscle a guy for a catch. And then I see people talking in this game, like, because they had Romeo Doubs in this game and they couldn't.
Well, Watson isn't playing.
I saw Watson wasn't playing, so they didn't really have their deep threat.
They are their two best man beaters.
But it can't be that one of your like 4 or 5 if the point of the receiving core is you don't have stars and you have depth, it can't just be that one of those guys is out and boom, you can't beat man coverage. You can't beat half the defensive calls. It just can't. That can't be the answer to that, and it's just so frustrating because it's the blueprint now. That's what teams are going to do to you. And you haven't proven that you can beat it. And so the next time that they go up against, a really good defense that is going to really game plan for them, they're going to have to be better prepared. But I don't know if it's solely a preparation issue, because obviously it's at least partially that, or if it's just that they don't have the horses. Like, I don't know.
I think the answer is they don't have the horses just to beat the man across from them one-on-one.
It's so tough, though.
I think that's answer one, except maybe Watson.
Yeah.
And then the second,
against the line.
But that's only one half of the answer. Because the other half of the answer is, why is that your only solution?
Is just go win, go get a bucket.
Just go beat your man one-on-one. It's like, do your coaching job. Your coaching job isn't just say, hey, all you guys just beat the guy across from you. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to sit here and you guys go do the work.
It's so tough because, by the seventh third down where you're getting just completely manned up and you can't do anything. It's like at some point, can we please just try a pick play, try a rub route, like, for the love of God. But yeah, it was tough in man coverage. That was my biggest negative though in this one, is just, You can't beat man coverage, and that's also a scary thing going forward. So it's kind of a double up. But Dad, do you have anything else on the negative side of the offense? I had one or two more things too.
I have a list of things.
I'm sure you do.
When they're blitzed, the O-line gave up the 9th highest QB pressure percentage of the week.
Didn't handle blitz as well.
Yep. I have some things on the quick pass already, which maybe doesn't the quick passing game doesn't match the whole season, but there's more. The slow start again in the first half, Green Bay was 31st in dropback EPA per play or total, and second half they were 15th. Not fantastic, but better than Minnesota's 16th.
Yeah.
For the week. The sack to pressure ratio was 25%, was Love's second worst on the year, behind Week 7 against Houston, where he's still kind of limited, I think, in his mobility.
Yeah.
And in the league, it was the 20th worst on this week, after being third best for the whole season.
Yeah. I mean, the O-line, struggled to hold up against blitzes a little bit.
And the blitz pickups weren't great either.
Yeah.
Both Wilson and Brooks gave up pressures, and like 2 out of 3 pass blocking snaps for Wilson and 1 out of 2 for Brooks. Jacobs didn't give any pressures in his pass blocking reps.
This is that.
And then we had more about the pass catchers not getting open. Coming into the game, Minnesota was giving up the 5th most yards of separation to pass catchers on average. For this week, they gave up the 5th fewest.
Yeah.
At 2.4 yards of separation. Almost a yard and a half less than their season's average.
I'm just trying to think back to any target where the receiver was open. I think the Kraft one is the one that comes to mind, where he was open coming across the field. And then besides that, there was one late to Dobbs, I think it was, in the hole between, like a cover 2 zone in the turkey hole. Outside of that, I mean, everything felt really tight. Everything felt like they were just, they tried to take a bunch of shots as well, which is
that was driving me crazy.
Why are we doing
I have
this?
Something about this, on the deep passes, his pass rating was 8th worst on the week, 39.6. I feel like shot play. Can we while you're under pressure and you're you're having trouble holding up against the pressure, why go for why not use more of the quick game?
Well,
in this game,
I don't know if we talked about it on here, but I've talked about it with you off thing. The quick game's been terrible this year. And we can touch on it briefly, but last year, Jordan Love was 6th in the league in EPA per dropback and 6th in the league in EPA per dropback in quick game, which is less than 2.5 seconds. That's per NFL Pro. This year, he's 11th in EPA per dropback and 22nd in EPA per dropback on throws under 2.5 seconds. The quick game, which was such an important part of this offense, the EPA per dropback on quick game was 0.16, and his EPA per dropback overall last year was 0.09. So quick game was their best type of dropback. It's just completely non-existent this year. They can't get anything going quick. Any receiver screen gets blown up almost instantly. They're not running any
screen. Yeah, the receiver screen game has been a mess all season.
Terrible. They're not running any quick.
Just a pick six waiting to happen.
Any quick slants, just there's nothing there. They're not really even throwing them. And I think it's a Love and a LaFleur thing is someone was positing that it's are they just so reliant on the run game early downs that they just have nothing in the passing game on early downs and they're just chucking it downfield? I don't know, but the quick game, I think, aside from the man coverage, I think the quick game, so man coverage, pass rush, and quick game, I think are the 3 biggest things that need to get fixed. We'll talk about the pass rush later. I don't know what the fix is in the quick game. I have no idea.
But in this game, the quick game was much better than the slow. On passes over 2.5 seconds, Love's EPA per dropback was 23rd in the league on the week. Mm-hmm. But in the quick game, it was 14th best. It was significantly better. A positive 0.23 EPA per dropback opposed to a negative 0.27 per dropback.
Yeah,
in the long developing plays. So
they got
I felt like this was a game they needed more quick game,
and they
especially
need more
against the heavy pass rush and blitz.
They need more quick game in every game. I feel like the offense. Yes. As decent as the numbers are for the passing offense, it definitely feels a little boom or bust. It doesn't feel like it has any rhythm to it. It doesn't feel particularly connected to the running game at all right now. It definitely feels like the offenses feel very siloed right now. So that's not ideal. And then just to circle back to the man coverage thing, I mean, this is something we were talking about before. We're kind of rambling a bit, but I would love to see Jordan Love use his legs more. I would love to see him scramble more, especially when they're getting all this man coverage. Everyone's going to have their backs turned to you. Break out of the pocket. And it's something you see a lot of the top quarterbacks do. It's a really important weapon for them. I think he has to be more willing to just get the yards that are there with his feet.
His scramble rate when under pressure, I was looking, I forget the numbers now, but I was shocked at how close to the bottom he was in the frequency at which he's scrambling when under pressure this year. He was like in the bottom 10 or something.
He does a great job, avoiding sacks. Like, he's actually the best in the league in like pressure to sack rate, I believe. Maybe not after this game, but
I think he's third now or something, but still really, really good.
Really good. So he's really good at that. That's awesome. But I would love to see him use his legs more. Just to touch on a few more negatives I had, though. The next thing is just, we talked about it. They're just not buttoned up in these big games. They're making mistakes. And for me, it was the details on offense specifically that really, really sunk them multiple times. Whether it was, the fumble on the first drive when you're moving the ball. We already talked about that with Jacobs. Reed, the drop on 4th and 2. I mean, that was a backbreaker. Too many men in the huddle on 2nd and 5. You end up punting. Too many men in the huddle. I mean, come on. Illegal formation on a 2nd and 8. When you got the conversion, that leads to another punt. That's really rough. That's from, Zach Tom, one of your best players on offense. And then holding on Sean Ryan takes a touchdown off the board. Now they end up still scoring a touchdown, but valuable seconds tick off the clock that they really could have used there. I mean, just so many different mistakes. And that's not even including, some of the ones on special teams and defense where you have offsides on a field goal. Now, was he actually offsides? No, but no. Still on there, and a few different ones. Briefly, what did you think about the kicking a field goal from the 4-yard line?
That was terrible.
Yeah.
Straight up terrible.
Go for it, please.
And Andy Herman talked about this a little bit. I think it was Andy Herman. Somebody was talking about this. Maybe it was Bukowski. I can't remember now. That they went for the wrong one. I think it was Andy Herman. Yes, it was Andy Herman. So he's talking about be consistent. Go for it on both. Or kick the field goal on both.
He was saying that.
But the one that they went for, you go for it and you make it, you got a touchdown. I mean, sorry, the one they didn't go for at the 4-yard line. You go for it and it's successful, you get a touchdown. The one they went for later, you go for it, you get a first down, you still might not get a touchdown.
Yeah, I think the argument for the one that they went for was they were trailing. That's like the only difference I can think. It was 0-0 when they kicked the field goal, and they were down 7-3 when they went for it the second time. I wish they had just gone for it on both of them. I see some people like, well, if LaFleur took the points, you would have actually had the lead at the end. No, it's not how it works. But
we'll explain the butterfly effect.
Yeah, but whatchamacallit?
We could talk about that for another 45 minutes if you want to.
But I wish they had just gone for it. They're nowhere near as aggressive as they need to be in these big games. I think that's part of it. I think that's part of the reason that they struggle to beat the best teams is they're not aggressive enough on 4th downs and just going for the jugular. And so I think that's part of it.
I agree. I would love to see them be more aggressive on 4th downs. They've not been aggressive this year, and it's actually they've gone backwards in that respect compared to LaFleur's other years. But the other thing we were talking about, kind of play calling and taking shot plays versus going for taking what's given to you in terms of moving the chains. That's something they haven't done either. They've been, instead of just trying to keep moving the chains, we were complimenting them on taking the pass to Kraft
when Watson
and not
was open,
taking the shot play to Watson. And so, yes, just keep the chains moving. But then the lack of aggression on the 4th down calls has been kind of maddening.
And I think it's holding them back right now. Any other negatives on the offensive side of the ball you wanted to talk about? I mean, I thought the running game was fine. I thought the offensive line, besides the blitz pickups, was okay. I thought that the pass catchers...
I can't tell. Are you into the good things or the bad things now?
I know. And I'm just looking, and it's like, we need more from Jaden Reed, I think, is another big one. I mean, he had 4 targets, 1 catch, 6 yards.
He has had a very quiet year.
Yeah.
Actually, compared to last year. I think most people thought there's going to be a lot more from him this year than there has been. And maybe that's part of the play design, not doing like quick slants and things.
He's got a lot of drops. I mean, the Wicks ones have been louder.
Had a lot of drops. I think he and Wicks might be among the top.
They are like 1 and 3
drops
of
the season.
Yeah. It's been quieter than Wicks's drops. Wicks's drops have been louder, but Reed has just as many, and it's been really tough because they kind of needed him to take that next step to was it most total yards for a Packers rookie receiver, I think it was, or something like that. But and then this year sophomore slump, I guess you'd say. I don't know. He just has not been as dynamic this year with the ball.
Love is tied for, well, at least that's what kept clean. 5th most highest drop percentage when kept clean.
Yeah, a lot of drops. A lot of drops this year because I mean, we're looking at it. Wicks has been struggling with drops. Reed has been struggling with drops. Watson, we know his history with drops, and he's the third guy we're getting to. And then Romeo Doubs can only catch the hard ones, is what we've established. He can only catch them when he's like in double coverage with a guy draped across his back.
Does he just need less time to think about it?
I don't know. But he does drop a lot of not a lot. He does drop some of the easy ones for sure. But yeah, it's just tough from the pass catchers, and it's part of the not beating man coverage thing, et cetera, et cetera. But let's move on to the positives on offense. I thought there were some. I thought the number one thing that I could say was the third down offense was good. There weren't that many positives on offense. I was kind of sugarcoating it, but the third down was good. They were 8 of 14 on the day, which is 57%. They only started 4 of 10, but even that is still better than the 35% that Minnesota usually allows. And it's about on par with Green Bay's 40% for the season. So they were able to convert on some third downs. There is that. That would probably be my main highlight for the Packers offense.
Yeah, and I guess I already talked about mine with the short throw success, where Love was 9th in the week in completion percentage over expected on the short throws, and 10th in passer rating on throws under 10 yards with a 103.8 passer rating. So, yeah.
If this can be like a sign of like things to come with the quick game picking up, maybe that's something to hang your hat on there, but it was not a very good day from the offense until like the last 2 drives. I mean, it was tough. It was tough. I mean, there's not much more you can say.
Maybe I should have parsed it out to the fourth quarter only.
I know, right? Hey, you can make the stats say whatever you want, really.
On their second to last drives of games, the Packers had the number 3 EPA per play.
This is one of the best offenses you've ever seen if you only look at the plays that that they completed. But let's move on to the defense, Dad. Unless there's anything else on the offense you wanted to say, I think we've kind of said our piece. The coaching needs to be better. The quarterback needs to be better. The pass catchers need to be better. The play calling needs to be better. The preparation needs to be better, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The stars need to be better. It's all of that. But let's move on to the defense, Dad, where, it wasn't that great either.
Are we doing anything different to say? Does it seem like, did you just sum it up on both sides of the ball with those statements?
Well, let's start with the pass rush on defense, because what else is there? There's nothing else you can start with.
I guess we're starting with the bad things.
Well, we're starting with the bad things. I think, you can say the coverage was bad, but it's not easy. And and the coverage was bad. It's not easy, though, to guard Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson for 4 seconds on every single play. So I think,
and apparently Jalen Naylor as well.
Oh yes, because we can't guard him either.
His rating for this game must have been insane.
Yeah, he's like 2 massive catches, right? One was a touchdown at least. Did he have 2 touchdowns? I can't remember. But anyway, let's start with the pass rush. And this is why pressure rate alone is not a perfect statistic. They're about average on the week in pressure rate. So you'd be like, oh, like solid day, pretty good. But they had the 3rd worst time to pressure and the 4th longest allowed time to throw. So Darnold was pretty much just sitting back there, patting the ball, burping the baby. Every single play it felt like. I don't know if you felt the same way watching it. I was like, is anyone going to get anywhere near this guy with any kind of consistency? And it was just really rough. It put a lot of strain on the secondary, which banged up as they were, you can't really expect them to do anything with that amount of time there. And a lot of people were then like, okay, well then why isn't Green Bay blitzing? Why aren't you sending blitzes? Main reason is Green Bay can't blitz. They're terrible at it. The Packers allow the 7th highest EPA per play against blitzes. So that's not an answer, and it's specifically not an answer against the Vikings, who are the 6th best offense against blitzes. So you can't rush with 4. You're terrible at blitzing, and in this game, the Packers NFL Pro had them with 6 blitzes, getting only 1 pressure on those 6, and Darnold went 5 of 6 for 55 yards and a touchdown on those. Just to look at those 6 blitzes really quick, I went back and watched them all. There's one where they send Cooper up the middle. He gets absolutely stonewalled by Aaron Jones, which leads to a 2nd and 3 conversion to Munt on the right
Jones
side.
Got right up into his ribs.
The next one, they send Eric Wilson, who gets caught up inside. They end up forcing an incomplete pass, but he doesn't get any pressure there. The third one, they mark it as a blitz, but it was kind of a blitz, kind of a screen. They pretty much have a perfect play called. Goes a massive gain to Jefferson on the screen. This next one, they send Cooper looping around. He does get some pressure, but Javon Bullard stops his feet in the secondary, and they get beat over the top on the blitz because they just don't get home fast enough. Then they send McDuffie later. There's a boot, but he hits Jefferson near the sideline. And then they send Cooper and Wilson. They don't really do much. That was the last play of the game where they hit Akers out of the backfield, and the game
they basically just tried to send the house, and Akers was all alone, and it was almost underthrown.
Yeah,
he barely got it. He bobbled it too. It's like, oh man, if you could only drop that thing.
But yeah, so the man coverage things, I think there are answers to. I don't know what the answer is for the pass rush. And these past few weeks, we've had, some maybe hope that they've been putting it together. Brenton Cox was coming on. LVN was having some good games. Gary was playing well. They were playing against the Saints with no offensive linemen. They were playing against the Seahawks with no offensive linemen. They were playing against pretty much bad teams. And I think it's real. I wouldn't even say the Vikings offensive line is that good. And so it's like, I don't know if there is a fix. Is it just like, okay, they just didn't show up this game. Maybe they can play better next game. Maybe they can play better, in a couple matchups in the playoffs. Maybe. But I mean, I think it starts and ends, not ends actually. There's plenty of other bad things we can talk about, but it all starts with the pass rush, right?
Yeah. And you watching it, you feel like, oh wait, we're getting there. We're getting close. But it was taking so long, and we hardly ever actually got there. It's,
No, it was that's
like
why the pressure
like
is
we're
fake.
closing. One thing that was really disappointing to me, we did not get pressure up the middle.
No,
much
not at all.
It really hurt losing Wyatt. So the rest of the interior, this is one of my bad things, pressure from the interior defensive line. Outside of Wyatt, they had 6 pressures and 80 pass rush snaps. And those players finished 39th, 45th, 53rd, and 65th amongst interior defensive linemen in win percentage on the week.
Very cool. Very cash money. Oh man. I mean, they just
I have more of the coverage.
Believe me, I do too.
Oh, did you not finish your coverage?
No, I have the coverage thing also, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. What you want to have? What you want to say? What you want about the coverage?
No, I mean, I already stole all the good parts for the pass rush, because I feel like the pass rush is the biggest. Like, man, that is a headache, because Gary, you need Gary to win on the edge, and they have Cam Robinson at left tackle, who, it's not like they still have Darisaw out there. If they still had Darisaw out there, I'd be like that's a really tough matchup. It's hard to beat him. He's probably the best left tackle in the league. They have Cam Robinson, who the Jaguars benched halfway through the year for Walker Little. And so they have him at left tackle. They have O'Neal at right tackle, who's, he's a good player. Their interior is questionable at best. This is not that good an offensive line. It's not like you're playing against the Lions offensive line or the Eagles offensive line. You should be able to win some one-on-one matchups. They won like none. But anyway, sorry. Go ahead on the coverage.
But on the coverage, okay, I could have followed, because I have some specific things, but they gave up the second most yards of separation on average of 4.6 for the week, only ahead of the Bears. This is 0.6 yards more per, average separation than the worst team on the season, the Raiders, and a full yard more than Minnesota usually gets on the season. Mm-hmm. So it's not like, it's only because we're playing the Vikings. Nope. We gave them a yard more yards of separation.
And
per target.
Like I mentioned, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you want to say something about the yards
I was
separation?
just say about the coverage. Just like I mentioned earlier, it is hard to, guard these guys for 4 seconds on every single play, when there is no pass rush. So that's fair. But even in throws where Darnold got it under 2.5 seconds, he was 12 of 13 for 115 yards and a touchdown. 0.56 EPA per dropback on passes under 2.5 seconds, which was 7th best on the week, and 8.8 yards per attempt, which was 4th best on the week. So you can say, hey, it's hard to cover back there for 4 seconds every play. Even when they didn't have to, they weren't guarding them. So it's like, I don't know. I don't even know what to say.
Yeah. And on the season, we had commented before about how, well, he gets pressure, but that's because he's holding on to the ball long.
Yeah.
And so we're still doing worse than the other teams against him when he's holding on to the ball long.
Yep.
The Packers gave up 190 yards after catch for the second most total in the week. Somehow they end up with the second fewest yards after catch over expected.
It's because these guys were wide open.
Is that just because the receivers are so open that more was expected?
They were like, I can't believe he didn't score a touchdown there. He had so much room.
It's like, that was a weird stat. It's like, what's going on here?
Yeah, tough.
And then the linebackers gave up 11 receptions on 12 targets for 151 yards and a TD. It was Cooper's worst coverage game of the season in terms of pass rating against.
It was a very similar script to the Lions game. They just hit in breakers over and over and over and over and over and over again. It was infuriating.
Yep.
What are you going to do?
So those are the two bad things: are the pressure from the interior defensive line for the most part, and those bits of the coverage. Do you have anything more? Any more negatives
for the defense? I mean, you already mentioned it, but it's just hard when you can't get any pressure. Like, that's the thing that I keep coming back to, is it's just too hard to play defense in the NFL when you can't get pressure. I don't really have any other negatives, but just thinking about, how I felt some players played, it's hard to really be, too mad at the corners. Like, they're in a really hard spot. You're going against two pretty top-level receivers and with no pass rush to speak of. It's hard to, pick apart Bullard too much when he has to move back to safety midway through the game, and he hasn't practiced there all week, and it's for his first game back. He didn't play particularly well, though. It's hard to be, the linebackers are what they are. They're not top-level players. Where the investment is on this...
I think one is.
That's fair, Cooper, but he's a rookie, and then the other two guys are more journeyman guys. And then it's the investment on this team is up front. The investment is first-round pick Gary, Kenny with a new extension this offseason, and Gary with a new extension last offseason. First-round pick on Lucas Van Ness. First-round pick on Devontae Wyatt, et cetera, down the line. And the only defensive...
Also first-round pick on Walker.
Yeah, but he didn't play in this game. But the only defensive lineman who showed up in this game was Carl Brooks. That's like the only guy on defense who had any kind of flash on the defensive line in this game. And so it was frustrating.
Well, actually, I would add, I have under my good things.
Okay, let's move over to good things.
Devontae Wyatt, he had the highest pass rush win percentage amongst all interior defensive linemen on the week. According to PFF, it was 55.6. How many snaps
did he end up playing?
He only had 10 pass rush snaps.
Okay.
And so by PFF, he had 4 pressures out of 10. By NFL Pro, he had 3 pressures out of 9.
Mm-hmm.
By NFL Pro, he had like the 8th highest pressure rate amongst all defensive front players. So that includes edge rushers.
I wonder, though, like how much of that is these slow pressures that don't actually impact the passer.
Because they had a bunch
of pressures that were just non-impactful pressures. Like, they had so many different instances where, yeah, they're getting there at the end and it'll log as a pressure, but overall, on the day, it's not really, it's a fake pressure in my opinion, because you're getting there, but he's already essentially, the guys have been allowed to get open. They've been allowed to work open. He's stepping up into the pocket. That was another thing. He was able to step up into the pocket so many times, which kind of ties back into what you were saying about how, overall on the day, the interior was just not good enough in this game. And man, I don't know. Yeah, Wyatt, on the day, NFL Pro had him with 3 pressures on the day. And then in terms of his time to pressure on the day, 2.43. It's not bad. It's much faster than the rest of this, the D-line had on the day. I think overall on the day, their time to pressure was 3.01. So, maybe you could argue that Wyatt, if he had played for the entire game, might have been an impactful piece there, and they might have been able to get some more pressure. Hopefully they can get him back, this weekend going forward, off of those concussion symptoms. But yeah, so that is at least something. I had another positive, and it was that the run defense was good in this game again. So that's something. Negative 0.2 EPA per carry allowed, which was 7th best on the week. Just a 26.9% success rate allowed, which is 4th best on the week, and only 2.7 yards per carry, which was the lowest on the week. A really good day from the run defense. So there's that. Like, they've been playing the run well all year long, which is cool. And, maybe bodes well for some things in the playoffs where you're able to force some 3rd and longs. Problem is, you're getting them in these 3rd and longs, and then you don't have the horses up front to take advantage of it.
I feel like we give up so many, 3rd and 7s.
Yes, it does feel like that.
I really feel like I'm sorry, listeners, that I actually have no data to support this besides my general feeling.
It does feel like the 3rd and longs.
It does
really
feel
bad.
like it. And I wish I looked up the numbers of what it actually is compared to what other teams are. It's the same thing we probably all have about, doesn't it feel like the Packers can never get the stop at the end of the game when they need to?
It does feel
How common that is the NFL. If you talk to fans of other teams, do they feel the same way? I don't actually know what the underlying average numbers are for drive to take the lead in, say, like the last 5 minutes of the game.
Mm-hmm.
How often is that successful?
What if
it sure feels high?
What if I told you that by EPA per pass, the Packers are the 3rd best defense in the league on 3rd and 7+? Doesn't that not? That feels fake, doesn't it? That doesn't feel real. That does not. I can't.
Is that because of some? What if you take away turnovers?
I can't take away turnovers on this one,
but
it could just be some. But still, that's still like it's surprising. Because I would have felt the same way as you. I would have been like, yeah, no, they're probably at best like 14th, on these like third and longs because it feels like they give them up all the time. But I mean, I guess not, and. Hopefully they can get back to doing that in these coming weeks because that would be very helpful. But yeah, let's stay on positives though, Dad. Anything besides the run defense and Wyatt's play that you had positively for the defense? Edgerrin Cooper had a good day in run defense. Yeah,
he had the highest run defense grade from PFF amongst all linebackers in the league on the week, and the second most run stops was 6.
I mean, he was also hitting guys at the line of scrimmage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He had 6 stops. I think were they all losses? Not even at the line of scrimmage. He was in the backfield a lot, and he had the third best pass rush grade from PFF amongst all off-ball linebackers.
Yeah,
so he was living in the backfield.
He had a really good day.
Coverage downfield, not so great, but the going upfield after the ball carriers and the quarterback, he was playing very well.
Hey, if the option, I mean. Compared to the rest of the guys where it's like we aren't getting any run defense or pass coverage, I mean, at least we're getting one of them this way. Hopefully he can, develop as a coverage player as his career goes on.
Well, he had a pretty really good most of the year. This was a particularly bad week.
Yeah, and I think they asked Matt LaFleur about him, and he was like, no, yeah, I had some good stuff and definitely had some ones that, also allowed some big plays. And I was like, damn, yeah, that happens. That is how it is for a rookie, but I think he ended up playing all but one snap, if I remember correctly. I believe someone tweeted that out. Sorry, I can't remember who, but he's getting a bigger role and hopefully can continue to earn that larger role because he definitely was one of the bright spots on the defense in this one because it did feel like the only negative plays they were generating were from Cooper in this one. But yeah, anything else on defense you want to touch on that, or should we briefly talk about the special teams?
I think I've rambled on about everything I had a note on and some things I didn't about the defense. So I think we're ready to move on.
All right, let's move on to the special teams. Some good, some bad. And we apologize if this is a very negative episode. I don't think it's over for Green Bay before we get to special teams. I don't think it's done. I just think that the way that they have played for a majority of the season is not going to be good enough. Now, could they turn it around and stop making these dumb mistakes? Yes, it's definitely possible. But they're running out of time is the big thing. Like, they have had 17 weeks now to clean up these small mistakes and figure out how to beat man coverage and get a pass rush going. And in some weeks they have it. But I guess when all of those things rear their ugly head in one game, it is especially deflating. When, like, it's not just one thing, it's every single thing that you've been bad at over the course of the year all comes crashing in at once. But let's talk about the special.
And it felt like we've been cleaning things up for a while. And I also agree that I don't think we're like, giving the postmortem on the Packers season because it's
not over until the fat lady.
We haven't seen it happen yet. We've seen it get close. So I think there is potential for more than we've seen.
I mean, yeah.
But we have, and so we're talking about how we feel because we haven't actually seen it yet when we'd like to. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean it can't happen. But
it doesn't mean it can't happen. It's just
what's the probability?
It's like with what they have shown you, it feels less and less likely that it's going to. And because we keep waiting for it to happen. We keep waiting for the game against the good team where it's like, okay, finally, they're not going to shoot themselves in the foot with penalties and fumbles. They're going to be able to get a pass rush going against one of the better offensive lines. They're going to be able to, force a couple of turnovers, force the other opposing offense to, maybe make some mistakes themselves. They're going to not make mistakes on special teams. They're going to execute at a high level for 4 quarters. They're not going to start a game slow and only score like 3.5 points. It's like you've seen the proof of concept against the bad teams. It's like where those things don't happen to them. But then every time they've played a good team this year, it's more of the same, which is why it's frustrating because this was their kind of last chance. But like you said, it's not over for the Packers. It's not a postmortem. They still have a couple of weeks here where they can put it together. And hopefully, we'll talk about, we'll be doing a pregame for the Bears game, but, hopefully go beat the Bears, get some momentum. And then, anything can happen in one game. And in a 1-game sample size, if anything can happen and they beat the Eagles somehow on the road, that's a lot of confidence they'd have. I'm just saying they'd be dangerous coming off that game. But anyway, there's a long road before we even get there. But Dad, let's talk about special teams. I thought the punting and punt coverage continued to just be an absolute nightmare. So just the punts. There's a 50-yard punt. That's fine. Then a 49-yard punt, which is a fine punt. But this thing was muffed terribly, and there wasn't a single Packer down there to punish them for it.
Away from
the
closest guy.
None of the gunners got down there, and they would have been able to force a turnover. I was so frustrated because it was just like, okay, you just didn't put in the effort to get down there because you would have just easily been able to fall on the football. And instead, he gets like an extra 2 seconds to go fall on it. Any Packers barely in the screen, so that's frustrating. Then you have a 29-yard punt. 29 yards. It's indoors, by the way, in Minnesota. There's no elements. There's no wind. A 29-yard punt from your 41 to the Minnesota 30. You might as well kick it through the end zone. You could have been just a touchback.
Much better off. Just boot it.
Much better back off. And then finally a 41-yard punt, which is not much better, from the Green Bay 28 to the Minnesota.
It's a lot better than 29.
Yeah, it's true. But from the Green Bay,
especially if you go by the percentages,
from the Green Bay 28 to the Minnesota 31. I mean, they have it even closer. But yeah, I mean, just a really rough day. Punting and punt coverage were really, really bad in this one.
Yeah, I mean, the punting was the thing that stood out the most. Kick return game wasn't much going on anywhere.
Yeah, I mean,
and on the plus side, we were 1 of 1 on field goals.
Yeah, no, field goal operation was good. Can we just say that was a terrible call? Like, he was not offsides. Like, come on, man. No. That should just let New York make all the calls, man. Just get rid of the refs on the field. We're done with that. We're done with the 1900s. Like, we just don't need that anymore.
It was like, it's beginning of the 1900s. Like, there's so much that they could automate in football.
Especially offsides, especially lined up offsides. That is so obvious.
Lasers.
That
it's like first down.
But that's
you
not
got you got a chip on the ball. You know where the players are. You just have that laser straight across there. Yeah, mm-hmm. Instantaneous judgment.
It's not why the Packers lost, though, so we're not going to harp on it too much.
I'm sure they would have won if that one play had gone the other way.
100%, yeah, and all the others too. If the others had gone the right way too.
One play.
Hey, if we switch 10 of them, we win by 30. So there's that. But Dad,
That's what we're talking. That's the playoff scenario we're looking at.
I know. Okay, well let's do player of the game, and then let's do like a little quick big picture wrap up, and then we'll call it player of the game. Who'd you have? I think we both had Cooper, right?
Edger Cooper. We're watching the games like this is the guy. It's the only guy who's like really making plays.
Yeah,
he's making high level positive plays.
Yeah, woke up with
so
exciting
to see him making a play out there.
Yeah, he was making a lot of good plays up front, especially in the run game. But final big picture thoughts, Dad, about this team going forward. If you could look into a crystal ball and say, in this future, the Packers are able to get it going.
Crystal ball's like, ooh, in this future, I know where to put some money. Some money down.
Fair, that too. Put some money down for me too while you're thinking about it. But specifically for the Packers, if you're like, okay, this is the thing where if they don't fix it, it's going to sink them. What would it be?
I'm going actually passing against man coverage.
Okay.
I'm not going pass rush.
I'm
going shootout.
What I thought you were going to.
I'm going shootout.
If the passing game can be like the passing game, more like the passing game was last year at the end of last year, who even cares about defense? Just score 40.
I'm thinking shootout scenario.
Yeah, no, that's a very fair argument. And when you say that, it's like, hey, just keep scoring points. If you can just find out a way to beat man coverage, and you're already
scoring touchdowns.
That too, and you're already crushing zone. You're destroying zone coverage. So if you can even get to like 12th best against man coverage, this offense would probably be unstoppable. And with the run game that you have going. But the fact that you're 25th against man is just killer. It is just destroying you right now.
And I think the coaches have to do more.
Yeah, but the thing is, I trust this coaching staff to do more. Yeah. I trust them to make the necessary adjustments. And so that's what's giving me hope going forward, is I still have 100% faith in Matt LaFleur and the coaching staff. I have 100% faith in Jordan Love and Josh Jacobs and, passing game there, running game there. I have faith in the coaching staff and the quarterback and the running game. Like, I have faith in those three things. And I think as long as we have faith in those three things, maybe you disagree with me. Maybe you don't have faith in those three things, which in that case, fair enough, to each their own. But I think as long as we have those three things,
to each their own. They might be wrong, but to each their own.
To each their own. But if they can just get together and fix a couple of things and just not make stupid mistakes in big games, they could be right there. But it is going to be tough. But anyway, any final thoughts because I think if I could change one thing, it'd probably still be the pass rush. But you make a compelling argument that if they can just score points, who cares? At that point. But any final thoughts for our listeners, Dad, or should we wrap things up here?
Let's hope for enjoy the rest of the week.
Yeah.
If you still got holidays, still got days off, enjoy the holiday week, enjoy the new year.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I hope you're having fun today, relaxing.
More fun than we were having on Sunday, so at least there's that. But yeah, and we'll be here for you, previewing the upcoming game against the Bears later this week. Post game of that, a preview of the playoffs as the Packers, hopefully maybe, get some momentum going into that, or maybe just, don't have any momentum and need to really get a spark going into the playoffs. But we'll talk all about that. Once again, please check us out on Blue Sky at FatherSonPacker and on Twitter at FatherSonPacker. Like, subscribe, comment, leave a review, tell a friend, Google, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, et cetera, all the above. Thank you again so much for listening. We will be with you for the rest of the year and also into the offseason, which we'll talk about later. But until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.